taller than Kathleen. When Terry called me on Saturday and said, Dennis, I have 3 things to ask of you. The first thing is, can you speak about Bob in relationship to Pleasant Hill Christian School? And when she said that, I was a little bit shocked because I've only known Bob, for 10 years. And I look out at this huge church filled, overflowing with people who have known Bob for decades. And I am amazed and I'm impressed by all the colorful outfits and people that are here mourning Bob. I know Bob because I am the chairman of the board at Pleasant Hill Christian School. And after seeing the children's service here, I get it. I know why there were 2 people that were asked to speak about Bob specifically. Because Bob was all about children. His upbringing, his life was all about kids. He was part of a big family and had very extraordinary experience as a child. And the times that I have seen Bob have been in relationship to children. And his love of children is extremely evident when you see him at Pleasant Hill Christian School. I had to make a list of all the things that he did at Pleasant Hill Christian School, otherwise I would, overlook things. And if you knew Bob, you knew that he was, as Kathleen said, about caring, about others, about social justice, which is kind of a fancy buzzword these days for love, for loving others, loving God, loving the community. And so I wrote down at least 7 things that Bob was integral to at Pleasant Hill Christian School. He was our longest serving board member at PHCS. A term on the board is 3 years, but he could never get off the board. He tried, but he served as a board member for more than a decade. And I've only been on the board for 3 or 4 years. And I was looking forward to another decade of him being the secretary and being the wise sage, wise counsel at school. And on the board, he was one of the 2 people who were in charge of figuring out financial aid for families. We have a lot of families who are in need of financial aid. And he was perfectly suited to look at these families' applications, look at their circumstances, and really understand what they were going through. And so he and Jalen Heath, who is our founder, were in charge of that. And I'm really going to miss his counsel on how we serve underprivileged families, underprivileged students. A little bit more fun thing that he did at school. He was part of our Sebastopol Holiday Home Tour Committee. And he wasn't just someone who advised. When we needed a house 2 years ago, and I'm not sure whose idea it was first, Terry or Bob, said, you can use my house. And if you know Terry and Bob's house, it's not big, but they filled it with so much love. And Bob and I especially, had so much fun, because I'm on the committee too, had so much fun decorating their house. We brought in dozens of nativity scenes, and that was the theme for the Harper house, was everywhere you looked there were nativities. On the shelf, in the kitchen, in the bathroom. We had 50, 60 nativity scenes everywhere. And not all of them belong to the Harpers. Many of them might have belonged to you guys. They put out a call for nativities, and the community came back and gave it to him. I better get going because Terry said 5 to 7 minutes. He was behind the scenes at everything at Pleasant Hill Christian School. He was not in the front. He was on the board for a decade, but he was not the person who raised their hand and was the spokesman for the school. He worked. He helped. He did anything you needed him to do to raise money for that school. If we had a pancake breakfast, he was driving to Petaluma to pick up the milk. He was mixing the pancake batter over in the community hall at 6 in the morning for that breakfast. And at the end, he was the one rolling the tables back into the closet with my 7-year-old son, who is now in Terry's classroom. And speaking of Terry, he was Terry's husband, but it's almost like they were hand in glove. If Terry wanted to do something, Bob was right there behind her. He was a huge support for the teachers at school, namely Mary Jo Kinzer and Janlyn Heath, who live up the street here. He was like a brother to them. And I know that we're all going to miss his helping hand if someone needed something done at their house, if something needed picking up for the school, something needed doing. Bob would raise his hand for that. And in the last week, our community has gone through so much hardship. And I thought, my goodness, how can we go on? There's so much pain in our community. And what I kept coming back to is something that has nothing to do with Bob, but it has a lot to do with Terry. In my years with knowing Terry, she has always been a beekeeper. And this year, this spring, she needed a place to put her hive. And I said, well, I've always been kind of interested in bees. Why don't you put them at my house? So Bob and Terry, one early day in March, April, went out and got a hive of bees, put them up at my house. And this was all, in the spring and summer when everything was going normal. And we've only known about Bob's illness for 3 months, and those bees have been working away, doing their thing. And ironically, we decided to harvest that honey on October 7th, Saturday. And so Terry and I broke into that hive, got the honey out. We're all ready to, we didn't extract the honey from the combs that day. We were going to do that later. But then the fires broke out. And then Bob's illness got worse. And those frames of honey were sitting there in a box. And I'm thinking, how do I live with normal life? How do I be a beekeeper when there's so much pain and suffering going on? Why am I thinking about honey on a day when one of my best friends is dying, when hundreds and thousands of people are evacuating? And it struck me that that's kind of what Bob would want. It's sort of a bittersweet harvest. It's a little bit of normal life that the bees can teach us something. And I kept thinking about it, and I realized that the bees are sort of like us. One bee can't do anything. 2 bees can't do anything. But a room like this can do miracles. A community. And Bob was all about community and working together, working for the greater good. And that little bee is making the honey, just working, busy, helping. And that's what I thought of Bob. He was always thinking of the bigger picture, of God, of family, of faith. And it kind of brought it back to me that, hey, this honey is that harvest of family, of faith. And When I taste that honey, when Terry has that honey, I can think of Bob. Think of the Harper hive that produced and will continue to produce dividends and love